December 8, 1941. The sun rises over Tokyo, casting golden light across a nation in jubilation. The newspapers scream triumph, the radio broadcasts roar with pride, and the streets overflow with cheering citizens waving flags. Japan has struck a mighty blow across the Pacific. Pearl Harbor lies in ruins. American battleships smolder beneath Hawaiian waters, and British warships sink off the coast of Malaya. Across Southeast Asia, Japanese forces advance seemingly unstoppable. Sake flows through the celebrations as Tokyo rejoices, believing Japan has achieved the greatest military victory in its history. But behind the closed doors of government buildings and naval headquarters, the mood is far different. A handful of Japan's most insightful leaders understand that this day of triumph marks the beginning of inevitable defeat. While the crowds chant songs of glory, Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto sits silently aboard his flagship Nagato, reading the detailed reports from Pearl Harbor. Every tactical goal seems achieved. 8 American battleships sunk or crippled, nearly 200 aircraft destroyed, thousands dead. Japanese losses are minimal. Yet Yamamoto feels no pride. He knows that Japan's victory is hollow and its consequences catastrophic. Having studied in the United States and served as a naval attaché in Washington, Yamamoto understands the immense industrial and technological power of America. Before the war began, he warned Japan's high command that a short war might bring glory for 6 months or a year, but a long war against the United States could only end in ruin. Now, holding the reports in his hands, he realizes that the one objective that truly mattered has failed. The American aircraft carriers were not at Pearl Harbor. Enterprise, Lexington, and Saratoga, the heart of America's striking power, remain untouched. Even worse, the vital infrastructure at Pearl Harbor fuel depots, repair docks, and submarine bases has survived intact. Japan has delivered a devastating blow without crippling America's ability to fight back. In Tokyo, Prime Minister Hideki Tojo and his cabinet celebrate, convinced the empire is destined for dominance. They speak of conquest, of a new Asian order, of a Japan that will rule the Pacific for 1,000 years. Yet in the same room, a few silent faces betray concern. Prince Fumimaro Konoe, who once sought to prevent this very war, understands the truth hidden beneath the headlines. He knows that America's industrial might eclipses Japan's by incomprehensible margins, 5 times the steel, 7 times the coal, 80 times the automobiles. These are not mere numbers, they are the measure of war's machinery. America can outbuild, outproduce, and outlast anything Japan can muster. Foreign Minister Shigenori Togo also sees the storm ahead. Having sat across from American diplomats in Washington, he recognizes the resolve of the United States and the fury that Pearl Harbor will ignite. The Japanese declaration of war, delayed by a failure at the embassy, arrived only after the attack had begun, making Pearl Harbor appear to the world not as a military strike, but as an act of treachery. That perception will transform this conflict into something far more dangerous, a moral crusade. Across the Pacific, America unites as never before. Reports pour into Tokyo, describing a nation transformed overnight. Isolationist movements vanish, replaced by a tidal wave of patriotism. Young men flood recruiting stations faster than they can be processed. Congress declares war with near unanimity, and President Franklin D. Roosevelt's speech calling December 7th a date which will live in infamy electrifies the American spirit. The Japanese leadership had hoped the attack might frighten America into peace. Instead, it has awakened the sleeping giant in full fury. Meanwhile, Japan's strategic planners face another grim realization. Their empire's future depends on seizing oil-rich territories across Southeast Asia. American embargoes have left Japan with barely 18 months of fuel, making conquest a race against time. But even if Japan captures every field in the Dutch East Indies, its total production would still pale in comparison to American capacity. The resource war is unwinnable. Admiral Osamu Nagano, head of the Naval General Staff, studies the shipbuilding data and feels the chill of reality. America's Two-Ocean Navy Act of 1940 has already set in motion the construction of an armada beyond imagination: carriers, battleships, cruisers, destroyers, all rolling out of shipyards that dwarf anything in Japan. Within 2 years, the United States will possess more carriers than Japan has major warships. By 1944, the balance will be hopelessly one-sided. Japan's early naval advantage is destined to vanish like smoke. The skies tell the same story. Japan begins the war with a few thousand elite pilots flying advanced aircraft like the Zero, unmatched in agility and speed. But production capacity seals fate. Japan can build perhaps 5,000 planes a year, full effort. America, still only ramping up, will soon build tens of thousands annually, 47,000 by 1942, 96,000 by 1944. Every Japanese pilot lost is irreplaceable. Every American pilot lost will be replaced, trained, and flying again within weeks. The arithmetic of war offers no mercy. The gap between the two nations is not of courage, but of capacity. Yamamoto knows this better than anyone. Japanese culture teaches that spirit, or Yamato Damashii, can overcome any obstacle. The belief that courage can substitute for resources runs deep through the military establishment. Yet Yamamoto, ever the realist, knows that bravery cannot sink a battleship when you have no steel to build torpedoes. Faith cannot stop bombers that come by the hundreds. Determination cannot refine oil that does not exist. By the evening of December 8th, while Tokyo celebrates, a few sober minds in government begin their private reckoning. They realize their entire war plan rests on false assumptions that America would negotiate after early defeats, that Japan could defend a vast empire from the Aleutians to Burma, that American carriers would not threaten their conquests. Each assumption collapses under the weight of reality. Even Japan's alliance with Germany, meant to deter the United States, offers no salvation. By the winter of 1941, Germany is stalled before Moscow and losing the Battle of Britain. The Reich cannot aid Japan, and its aggression only ensures that America will fight on two fronts with unwavering purpose. Japan, already bleeding resources in its endless war in China, has now added America, Britain, and the Netherlands to its list of enemies nations, with combined industrial output hundreds of times greater than its own. In quiet corners of Tokyo, some officials whisper of peace, wondering if Japan might negotiate while it still holds the upper hand. But the military will not listen. To question victory is treason. The empire has chosen its path, and there is no turning back. That night, Yamamoto writes in his diary, noting the bitter irony of Japan's success. He records that Japan has achieved a brilliant tactical victory that ensures ultimate strategic defeat. He predicts, with chilling accuracy, that within 2 or 3 years, American power will crush Japan completely. His words are not pessimism, they are prophecy. The war that has just begun is already lost. Over the next 4 years, Japan will fight with astonishing valor, achieving moments of brilliance from the Coral Sea to Midway to Guadalcanal. But each triumph will fade as America's industrial juggernaut gathers momentum. The carriers that escaped Pearl Harbor will become the spearhead of a relentless counterattack. Submarines will sever Japan's lifelines, bombers will darken its skies, and the once proud cities of the empire will burn. By the time atomic fire ends the war, the outcome will have long been decided. The truth, known to a handful of men on that bright December morning, will become the tragedy of an entire nation. The cheers that filled Tokyo's streets on December 8, 1941, were not the sounds of victory, they were the echoes of doom. Japan had not merely awakened the giant. It had ensured its own destruction. And as history unfolded exactly as Yamamoto foresaw, the lesson of that day became eternal. No matter how brilliant the tactics or bold the spirit, no nation can triumph against the sheer weight of industrial reality. December 8th was not just the day Japan celebrated victory. It was the day Japan lost the war,